how can we be continuing? If we do allow some of that pain in, how not to be drowned by it? Yeah, the first thing is to listen, and in order to do that, we need a certain amount of stability and strength, and we can't do that alone. I think we need each other. We need community. We also need enough joy, enough peace to be able to hold the pain without drowning in it. We need to know how to cultivate that joy kind of in every moment, to see that despite the incredible pain and suffering that is there, there's also wonder. You know, the wonder of the present moment is still available to us. And we need hope. We desperately need hope. But in order to touch the hope, I think we need to be honest about the fear and the despair. We need to accept that our civilization may end.
Hello, dear ones. How are you? As always, it's a joy to be here, and we are really enjoying hearing more from you. And this podcast is feeling more alive. So keep your letters, comments, and reviews coming. We really love to hear from you. Thank you to our newest patrons, Jessica Farrow, Marij Ostinidi, Elizabeth Large, and Helena Lovendale. One of the new patrons shared that she'd listened to every single episode, although this was the first time she'd been in contact and set herself up as a patron. I imagine there are many of you that had been meaning to get in touch or support the show. I would like to give you a nudge to do it. We are 2 years in, and I do have days where I wonder how sustainable this is for me personally without more financial support, which of course isn't a threat, but a reminder of the humanness on this side of the creation process. Honestly, it would be amazing to eliminate that question and focus on the interviews. If you have ever been moved by anything you've heard on the show and you want us to continue, please do head to our website, click on community, and become a patron. You'll be able to join our group and chat to other patrons around the world, as well as join our video calls. And this month is actually this weekend. They're so enriching, these amazing video calls where we talk in more depth about the themes or the specific things that have come up through the interviews, as well as a kind of just check-in of how we're feeling and what's going on in our lives and where we feel we are at in the world story. Another way you can support indirectly is by joining Presence Collective, our community for creative, connected, and courageous living. It's really very beautiful and powerful for those involved. This month, we're exploring eco-grief and eco-anxiety with tools, practices, our book club, and more. It might be the perfect remedy for those of you that are either interested in Extinction Rebellion but didn't join this week, like something was stopping you from getting involved, or for those of you that need some extra care next week, having been out there sharing your gifts and your time and your energy for the rebellion. Another gift I want to share is that I've been uploading some meditations and mantras to the app Insight Timer. I've actually been meaning to do this for a few years since they opened up to teachers, as I've always loved the app and the timer bell it has. You can search for me on there, Amisha and there's a selection of mantras and a beautiful 22-minute meditation called Meditation for Presence. It's totally free to use, and there are some other great teachers and music tracks on there. We are planning to go to the Pioneers Conference in California next week. And for those of you listening in that part of the world or who have connections there, please get in touch with us if you have ideas of who we need to interview in Northern or Southern California. And if there are events that you'd like to invite us to, or if any of you can host me during our visit. This week, we have another beautiful conversation. The theme is monastic life, mindfulness, and engaged Buddhism. For me, this is a very interesting topic of that relationship between living a spiritual life and living a life where we're connected to what's happening in the world. And also what it is that we need to build for ourselves around that in order to make it happen and to make it flourish. I was participating in the Art Earth Tech gathering earlier this summer, where many of us were gathered to explore how we can make a wiser world. There were academics, artists, technologists, and many other specialists. In amongst the group, I met 2 monks from Plum Village, brothers Phap Linh and Phan Ham. We had some wonderful discussions over the week, and then the 3 of us sat underneath the tree in the rose gardens for this episode. Brother Phap Linh, also known as Brother Spirit, is a musician and seeker. Ordained as a monk in 2008 as a disciple of Zen master Thich Nhat Hahn, he has composed many of the community's most beloved chants. As a layperson, he studied mathematics at Cambridge, then worked as a composer, chef, and mass tutor in London. Now helping to create a place of refuge for people to learn about mindfulness and community life are his principal sources of joy. He is also pioneering Plum Village yogi and scientist retreats, exploring how the wisdom of mindfulness and neuroscience can lead to paths of healing. In this conversation, we explore the question, how can we be truly present to ourselves, to each other, and to the earth in these times? I hope that you enjoy. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. I am delighted to be sat in this beautiful garden here at La Cherie in France, near Paris, and we're here for the Art Earth Tech gathering. We are sitting under a tree, which feels very perfect to have this conversation. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, Brother Phap Linh.
Thank you. It feels, really special to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a real pleasure to spend this week with your presence and also Brother Phan Ham from Plum Village, and to have your perspectives in amongst this gathering, which has been looking at our blind spots to creating a wiser world. And I was really taken, first of all, by your story of how you became monastic, because I think it's something that I've never really thought about, like, who are the humans when you see a monk or you see somebody who has chosen that way of life. And in India, often it happens sort of at childhood and through astrology. And to hear your story and how you made that choice, just really, it was just very intriguing. Can you share?
Yes. I remember asking you if you wanted the short, the medium, or the long version. I think it ended up being the kind of medium-long version. So there are so many different places where the story could begin. It doesn't really have a very clear beginning. For me, the major kind of event in my life that led me eventually in that direction was the death of my mother, which was kind of like a sudden tearing in the fabric of my life. That's how I experienced it. It's like everything up until that point seemingly was okay, manageable, and I had a sense that I knew what I was up to, I knew where I was going, more or less. I was very kind of anti-religious, to be honest, quite committed to reliance on a kind of scientific worldview, quite skeptical. And then suddenly, after my mother died, I just found myself at a loss. I had nothing to manage that grief, that just the situation. We had no rituals in my family. We had no tradition to rely on. We were just kind of left with platitudes, really, and not knowing what to do. I mean, I remember being in the hospital, seeing my mother in the ICU, and my memory is that she was still breathing, and she was still warm. I remember touching her body and she was warm, but the doctors told us, that's it, there's no brain activity. So she's died. And this kind of, and for me, that I tried to take that on, and my father was standing next to me, and he was kind of in this profound emotion and shock, and I felt nothing. I remember saying something very cold in a way, now that seems to be very cold. I just said, yep, that's it, the brain activity has stopped, so she's gone, so why are we standing here, kind of thing. Which was really, it seems very strange to me now, and the preciousness of the body, of just like connecting to her, just feeling the ways in which she was still there. Just I had no way to do that. I had a place at Cambridge to study maths, so I went there, but I didn't do much studying. I was kind of in free fall. I was really, I don't think I went to any lectures. I didn't even know where the lectures were being held. I didn't know where the lecture hall was. And I kind of completely fell through the pastoral system. I think they forgot that I existed because I didn't go to anything. I just didn't register.
It's being missing.
Yeah, exactly. Because there was no change. It's not like I was there and then I wasn't. I just wasn't there. Yeah, I was a mess. I was, drinking and smoking and, kind of like, smoking marijuana and just, anything to forget or to escape or just not to feel. I just didn't want to feel. Or I didn't know how to feel. But something in me was at the same time searching, looking for a way to understand this situation, understand what it meant. What does death mean? What does it mean for somebody to be there and then not to be there? Yeah, I kept asking those questions, and I remember reading Siddhartha Hamenhesse, Kundun, the film about the Dalai Lama. It really, really hit me. And something was kind of churning away in me. And one of my friends said, there's this place called Plum Village. I'm going there this summer. Do you want to come along? And I thought, okay, what is it? What's going on there? And he said, well, there's this teacher. He's called Thich Nhat Hahn. Apparently he's enlightened. So I kind of pricked up my ears, and I sort of thought, well, if somebody knows what's going on, then surely he should know. And there was another question behind that, which was really a question about worldview, about ontology, about what is the case. And I was kind of, really sticking with my scientific worldview. There's kind of physicalism or scientific materialism, realism, whatever you want to call it. That there's stuff, there's matter, there are particles, there are physical forces, controlling their interactions, and this is just going on in this kind of utterly meaningless way, ultimately. Mechanical, maybe chaotic, but ultimately mechanical. And that's a very cold universe to live in. It's a cold, meaningless, bleak place. And so I wanted to know, is there not something more? And if there is something more, then what is it? How can I touch it? And at the time, I kind of wanted evidence. I was like, if there is something more, then there should be proof. It should be very clear. Like I should be able to see it. And so I think I went to Plum Village. I agreed to go for the summer retreat. This was in 1999. I went there hoping for some kind of proof of something. Either I see something that convinces me that there is something more, or I don't, and then that's that. That, okay, I accept it's just matter. I had this notion, kind of a bit silly now when I look at it, and I don't know exactly what form of proof I expected, but, telepathy would have been good, or maybe some levitation, or, kind of like communicating with spirits, or, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I was looking for something impressive, something really convincing. I would go to these talks by Zen Master Thich Nhat Hahn, and I kind of kept waiting for him to tell us. So which is it? What is this spirituality stuff? Like, tell us the secret. And it was so frustrating. I found like everything he said was about my relationship with my parents, my relationship with my body, with my habits, with my daily life. And I wanted nothing to do with any of that. I didn't want to know about it. I wanted anything but that, because that was a mess, and it was painful. I just didn't want to go there. I wanted, something grandiose, something like, I don't know, lights in the sky, or, anything other than, having my feet on the earth. And everything was about having my feet on the earth. I tried so hard to fight him, actually. In our tradition, we call Thich Nhat Hahn Thai. It just means teacher in Vietnamese. So it's kind of like a warm, respectful form of address. So from this point on, maybe I just call him Thai, because he's, a pretty significant figure in my life. And I really tried to kind of refute everything he was saying. I tried to find some flaw, something I could resist. But my experience is I just have this vision of kind of like trying to fight the ocean. The waves are coming in, and I'm kind of like there, like, stop, no, and then boom, another wave goes by, and I try to hold it back, and boom, another one, and there was just nothing. There was no chink. There was nothing I could find to fight. Independent of the words he was saying, there was something in the tone, in the music of his voice, that was speaking to part of me that I didn't even know was there, maybe. Maybe you could say it's like an energy of compassion or just presence. He was just there in a way I had never really experienced in another human being. He was just fully, completely there. And I could see that everything he did was kind of like art. He would just pour a cup of tea. And just watching him pour a cup of tea, I was transfixed. I was like, okay, that's how to pour a cup of tea. I didn't know that. Watching him move through space, he would just walk out of the hall, and every step, it's, okay, that's how to walk. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a way to walk, like, that you could do it better in a sort of more real way. There was something very compelling. I was still kind of fighting. And I think it was only in the third week of that retreat, the four of us went from Cambridge. We were all friends, and one of them lasted about 3 days. One of them lasted a week. The other one held on for 2 or 3 weeks. And I just stayed because I felt like there's still something here that I'm not getting, but I just want to know what's happening. And I guess...
And you were likely the one that everyone thought would leave first.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I wouldn't have predicted that I would stay that long. And it was in the third week they had, and we still have, a festival called the Rose Festival. And it's just a celebration of motherhood, mostly mothers and also fathers. It's very beautiful, very simple. And during that ceremony, a text by Thai is read at some point. And it's kind of like a prose poem that he wrote when his mother passed. And it's just a beautiful evocation of the love of your mother, and kind of a reminder not to forget and not to miss the chance to tell her that you love her, to say thank you, to appreciate that boundless source of love. And at some point in the reading of that text, I suddenly kind of realized, wow, okay, she's gone, and I can't tell her this anymore. And just suddenly all of this grief that had been locked away inside me, it just broke through. It was like, I experienced it like an eruption, like a volcano. I actually started howling in the meditation hall. It's, maybe 300 or 400 people. It was kind of ceremony going on. And I just like started howling full-throated and uncontrollably, having felt really almost nothing for the 18 months since her death. I'd been numb, completely cold, without even realizing. I would go into shops and people would say, "Oh, what's wrong? Are you all right? You look so sad." And I'm fine. Why don't talk to me?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that I was in this state. There was suddenly this eruption of emotion, of grief, and I had to run out of the hall, and I just remember ending up by the lotus pond, kind of kneeling on the grass, gripping the earth, just being racked by these sobs, and I just felt a hand on my shoulder, and I saw a corner of a brown robe, and I don't even know to this day, I don't know who it was, but one of the brothers was there, and he just put his hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything, and he communicated something in his simple presence that helped me just to calm down, to be with the grief without drowning in the grief. And over the next week or so, I really learned that. They taught me, and I have gratitude, to those brothers to this day, just for kind of giving me a way to be with my feelings without being overwhelmed by them. And from that day, my life really started to work again. I was able to go back to Cambridge and gradually start to kind of climb the mountain again. I could, put myself back together, study again, become a slightly more functional human being.
Mm-hmm. I love the, all of it, but the kind of looking for something miraculous so that you can somehow quantify the unquantifiable.
Right.
And for me, one of those moments was going to the first time I went to see Amma, the hugging mother. And of course, the energy in the room was so beautiful. But it was when I realized that she hadn't gone to the toilet for at least 7 hours. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
there's something going on here that's unquantifiable.
Yeah.
And seeing her have that same amount of energy for each embrace. Yeah. And it just makes me laugh that I needed something that would challenge my own perceptions of the limits of being a human in order to open up to challenge my own perceptions of my limits as a human.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's like we almost want to bring the spiritual into the material just to be convinced that there's something other than the material. It's really weird, actually.
It's a bit of a waste of time.
Yeah.
We were given away earlier. Save us time, or maybe not, who knows.
Yeah, if we just didn't start out with those mental categories. I think that, it's I love this. I have to apologize to all my Irish friends, but I just love this joke. There's this Irish joke that people tell if you're in Ireland and you're driving along and you lose your way, you're trying to get somewhere, and you see an old guy leaning on a fence, so you pull up and ask him, "How do I get to such and such a place?" And the joke goes, that he says, "Oh, yeah, you can go there, but I wouldn't start from here." Yeah, there's something profound in that. There's actual wisdom, it sounds like this kind of like sideways logic, that wherever, we want to touch meaning and depth and spirituality, but if we're starting from, trying to fit it into this kind of all-encompassing worldview that we already have of materialism, well, I wouldn't start from there. But that's where I was, so.
But how can we not start from there if that's where we are?
Absolutely, yeah. I guess we have to somehow, just leap across the abyss and hope for the best. Yeah, for me, I didn't even know what had happened really in Plum Village that first time. And I just knew something important was going on and I had to keep going. So I kept going back. I would go back every 6 months or so for another retreat. And the idea of monasticism did not arise. I didn't have the thought of becoming a monk. It just didn't cross my mind. Mostly because I was in a relationship, and a very happy relationship. I remember the first time when I got back from that first retreat, my girlfriend picked me up at the airport, and we had the biggest fight of our lives. It was just really... She was kind of shocked because I'd changed so much, and I suddenly declared that I was vegetarian, I didn't drink alcohol anymore, I'd probably lost a lot of weight, and I was just different, and also really full of it in a way. I was coming back like, I will save you, I will solve all your problems, I have all the answers, I've understood everything. I'd been there for 4 weeks and I thought I'd got it all. I thought, I will tell you how this goes. She is actually a very deep soul, and kind of in a way much more intuitive and spiritual than I was, or maybe I still am. And she could kind of smell, she has a very good bullshit detector. And she was like, no, there's something fake about this. So she was not happy. But I kept going back, because even if I had misunderstood, or even, I had all this arrogance, there was something real going on. And it was after about a couple of years, I think she saw that, something was changing in me, that kind of independent of whatever I said about it, I was actually becoming a little kinder, I was more able to listen, I was maybe more understanding, or less judgmental. So she kind of said, okay, something interesting is happening. And she accepted to go as well, to go for a retreat. And from that point on, it was very clear to us that this would be our path somehow, that this would be our way. We still had our work, and she was at the BBC, I was a composer by that point in London, and
making good use of your maths degree.
Yeah, maybe in a very indirect way. I somehow related, but not at the surface. So we would then go on retreat together. It became very important for us to have a meditation practice in our lives. After a few years in London, we decided to we arranged everything to have a sabbatical period, because every time we were in Plum Village, it just felt like, we would just be starting to touch the depths of of what was in us, of maybe understanding what formed our kind of ways of being, our habits, the things that maybe still caused us to suffer or struggle. And then we'd have to leave. So it'd be after a 3-week retreat, we're like, okay, we're just starting to get somewhere. We should come back for a longer retreat. Obviously, we need longer. So we said, okay, within 1 year, from this day, we kind of made a vow to each other. Within a year, we will come back and do a 3-month retreat. And then we went back to London, we got caught up in all of our stuff, and it took us until the very last day of that year, and we just made it. We just managed to leave London, and we had this 7-month period to go and explore. So we went hiking, along Compostela pilgrimage, and we went to Plum Village. We ended up staying there 7 months, actually, more than the 3 months we'd planned. And then at the end of that period, it was clear, like, we're not going back to London. She called the BBC, she said, that's it, not coming back. I could continue as a composer, getting commissions in London, but working in France. So then we actually bought a house near Plum Village, in my ancestral village. My mother was French. We started this kind of rural idyll, little broken down house, 4 walls and a roof, and we started fixing it up and getting into pouring concrete and learning how to do all these things. And she started a blog. I was writing my music, and it was amazing. We would go to Plum Village every so often, once a month or something, just a drive away. And throughout all that time, something was continuing to grow in us, and it's hard to say exactly what it is, but at least part of it is this sense that, yeah, a desire to help in some way, a desire to be of service, a kind of an aspiration to bring transformation to people, to help people to suffer less, and first of all, to help ourselves to suffer less. I think in my education, everything had been very much focused on, you've got to be the best, you've got to be the most intelligent, you've got to perform, you've got to maybe make a breakthrough, be creative, do something amazing, and basically look out for number one, and then maybe have a family. And, it was kind of like this fairly narrow vision. And I think just being close to Thai and the other monks and nuns, I just started realizing, well, it doesn't have to be like that, that there's this other way to live where you can be just in the service of all beings, just of everyone. And it was just growing and growing and growing. And at a certain point, it just didn't fit anymore in this little French village. It was just hard for us to live there. We didn't drink, so we couldn't really socialize, because that was people would just go to the bar in the evening, and by that time we were already in bed. We would wake up at 5 and and meditate, and we didn't eat meat, so we couldn't go to any of the village festivals. We just didn't fit there anymore, and this little householder life also didn't. It was kind of narrow somehow, and also just this sense of that something amazing was happening in Plum Village, that there's this incredible Zen master just dispensing these teachings. And how could we not be there? Every time I left Plum Village, I would ask myself, why am I leaving again? I can't quite remember. It just didn't seem to make sense. So at a certain point, we were kind of like, well, let's just maybe stop leaving Plum Village. Completely unexpectedly, I think, neither of us had the thought of monastic life. And yet suddenly it was there for both of us. With incredible synchronicity, it had arisen in both of us. And so we had this very memorable conversation in which we kind of broached the topic. And actually, from the moment we started talking about it, somehow it was clear. I think we already knew that we were just going to do it. Because in our lives, we'd always told ourselves, if we have a choice to make, we'll take the crazy one.
Beautiful. That's a nice way to live.
Yeah. Whatever, if there's a big decision, we're just going to do the crazy thing. And so as soon as this came up, it was kind of clear. Mm-hmm. There's nothing crazier than this.
But this isn't going on a, climbing holiday or something. Or, ordering, something new on the menu. Right. It's a whole lifestyle for which is a lifelong commitment.
Yes.
And you were 25, were you around that age? At that
point, maybe 20, I was 27, I think, or just 26, actually, when we started talking about it. And she would have been 24 or 25. She's like a year and a half younger. Mm. It did feel completely bonkers. It was completely nuts. Because so many of our friends, in a way, they expressed, even jealousy. They would say, how come you guys are still together after all these years? You seem to love each other more and more. Now you have this kind of amazing life in this beautiful village. You're doing exactly what you want to do. And so we were looking at each other, and we're gonna give this up? Are we nuts? Is this completely insane? And yet there it was. It was just, it was calling us. And a big part of it for me was this sense that this love that was growing in us and between us, it had to continue to grow. There was particularly the feeling that I had in front of me this incredible person who had such a potential for love and for helping others. And we were kind of in this, it's like a magnetic dipole. We were bound together, and in a wonderful way, but also, yeah, with some possessiveness, with a little bit of like, jealousy would come up if I saw her with someone else, or, it was kind of like, there was that I wanted her for me. And I started realizing it's not fair to the world if I keep this incredible being for myself. I have to set her free so that she can help, so she can love everyone, not just me. And there was also this very powerful sense that, when you want to hug somebody, you want to hold them in your arms, and you want to hold them as tight as you can. And you want to stay together, like, just, I have you, you have me, here we are, we have each other. And as we continued in this path of meditation, I think we were both seeing the ways in which it's actually not possible to hold each other, to encompass each other in the span of an embrace, in our arms, that something always escapes, like smoke, because she's not just that body, she's also her parents, her education, her culture, all the people who have touched her friends. She's the whole history of life on this planet. She's the sun and the moon and the stars and the cosmos. And I can't hold that in my arms. So the only way is to release, to really love, to realize that I can't grasp the beloved, I can't hold her. Yeah, it still felt nuts though. It took us a few months, talking it through and seeing, can we do this? Can we do this without breaking our hearts as well? What would it be like? Will we be able to still feel that we can continue to love each other, knowing that we'll be living in two separate residences. The monks live in one place, the nuns live in another place, about 3 kilometers apart. Is that going to be bearable? Are we going to be able to handle it? Not being able to touch each other,
or even go for a walk and have a long talk.
Exactly. Yeah, because there's a lot of things in place, to make monastic life work. We monks and nuns don't go off into an isolated place just to and hang out. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we do kind of knowing, like, wow, are we going to be able to survive? Having this incredible connection, and are we going to be able to continue to nourish it and deepen it?
And see each other every day.
Yeah.
Kind of from a distance.
Right. Yeah. It was tough. I mean, it was really hard at first. So we took some time to prepare. We took 3 months to really check, like, does this make sense? Are we doing this? After 3 months, we made a kind of very firm decision, a commitment. And then we took another 6 months to go and be with our families, our friends, to get rid of all our possessions, to give everything away. Yeah, just to take time and try our best to explain it. So that didn't go super well. It was tough. Yeah, there was a lot of... it was tough for our families, very hard.
And how does it feel now? How many years later?
So we then had another year. So once we then went to the monastery, we had about maybe another 7 months as aspirants. That means that you're kind of in training to become monastics. Then we were ordained in February 2008. So it's been, 11 and a half years, getting on for 12 years. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm kind of in this, I feel so lucky to be able to say now that for me, that love between us has never stopped growing and deepening. and it hasn't been without its challenges, and to some extent the challenges continue, and there have been some really hard points on that journey for each of us, sometimes individually, sometimes together. But it's amazing to still be growing in love, and for that love to be kind of not exclusive, that it can include many others as well. So there's this sense of it becoming the love of brotherhood and sisterhood that can embrace many, many, many people. And I'm so grateful. I kind of have an immense debt of gratitude to my teacher, to Thai, for trusting us. And he, many, many times he would kind of like throw us together, he would give us a project to do. And I think for a lot of the other brothers and sisters, that was hard. Mm. They would say, no, you have to keep them apart. If you let them hang out too much together, they'll just leave. They won't be able to handle it. They'll leave, they'll go back to their lay lives. And of course, that's not ultimately a problem either, right? It's not a prison, but there's a desire for it to work. There's a desire for, if we have this aspiration, there's a wish that it can be realized. But Thai trusted us. I think he saw that we were really committed, but that also we were a good team. We just worked well together. We have lots of complementary skills, and like it's. And I think ultimately, the way we experienced it was this sense that the energy between us, the love, of course, in the couple, a lot of that is, there's sexual energy, there's attraction, and ultimately that energy will go towards creating children. Not in every case, but for us, maybe we would have had children. And it's a creative energy. It's, to create life. So Thai saw that, and he said, if they're going to manage, like, we have to take this energy and do something with it. It has to be channeled in another direction. So he would just give us, amazing, wonderful projects to put our energies into, to transmute that creative force, for it to continue to flow, for us to,
It's beautiful. It's a very strong and visceral example of that. Like, if you love someone, set them free, which we say,
right.
Most of us don't really understand to that level. What has this whole experience taught you about the meaning of the beloved?
Well, there's lots of dimensions to that. I think one thing is the sense that I became increasingly aware while we were still living as a couple, that there was this paradoxical situation in which this incredible person that I loved was in front of me, and yet I kept making her suffer. I kept didn't want to, didn't mean to, but I did. I think it was also partly this sense of, I just want to learn how not to do that, how to make her suffer less, and how to understand her more. Partly, I think the commitment to that path of love is to never stop in that process of transformation and healing. We kind of learn to be gardeners of each other, to see that, we each have our compost, we each have our mud, and yet we can also produce beautiful flowers. Mm-hmm. And not to be afraid of the compost, not to be afraid of the suffering, the difficulty, the pain, the wounds, but to know, not to require the beloved to be perfect or ideal, but to see that, to love is to accept the other person as they are, and to become a gardener, and to allow them to be a gardener of you, to know that that person sees you in your weakest moments, in your most difficult moments, and still accepts you, still loves. I think that's for me the beginning of the possibility of learning to love myself as well, learning to accept myself. If this other miraculous being that I admire and love so much can accept me, then maybe I can actually like accept myself.
It feels perfect that as you've been talking about her and about that experience that you've had together, we've had shoveling and gardening happening in the background.
Yeah.
It's like showing the work and the getting into the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the ideal, and that's nice, and we can have like very colorful, beautiful images, but it's also that the kind of the daily, what do we do? How do we manage, when we fight? How do we reconcile? How do we keep seeing each other anew?
One of the things that's really prevalent with many people that I know in today's world is the kind of inability to really commit to something and the constant search for a different path, a different experience, a different way, go visit somewhere else, maybe live somewhere else. It's a constant desire to keep moving, to keep finding something. And especially with spirituality, these days, many people do like yoga, and then they do a more Buddhist meditation, and then they do plant medicine ceremonies in the Amazon. And so there's this constant kind of mixing of traditions. And I wonder, what was it in you? And maybe also it was a bit of a different time, like, I don't know, like 10 years ago. With having made that decision to be monastic, to be committed to something, did that just cut out any other noise, like or does the noise still come, and do you have to keep recommitting internally to your path?
It's a good question, and I think there's elements of both.
The noise of the plane is coming to accompany this part of the conversation. Yeah. Where could we go on the
plane? Take us somewhere else. There's this. I feel lucky in that I've never felt the need to shop around, in terms of spiritual traditions. I see sometimes others in a state of suffering because of this uncertainty of like, well, maybe there's something better out there. I don't want to stop here because who knows what's around the corner. And there's sometimes a craving for perfection. Because talk about community, I live in a community, and a lot of people come to that community and they're kind of checking it out, and they're looking for the perfect community. Well, the ones that look for the perfect community, they don't stay. They don't last very long, because there's one thing that my community is not, and that is perfect. It's a human enterprise. It's complicated. It's messy. We're doing our best. But I feel lucky in that and I kind of give thanks to whatever it is in my ancestors or my upbringing, or that just gave me this clarity. When I met my teacher, I just knew this is my teacher. And I don't know why that is, but I really had no doubt about that. Doubt about lots of other things, but not about that. So that at least has never been in question. And I feel very, very lucky that I have never given rise to the thought of leaving monastic life, which is often, it's also a big challenge for people. They're like, do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? And for me, that just hasn't arisen. Again, there's something deep in me that I don't really know how to explain, that is clear, that I just know that this is my path. This is what I'm doing. The doubts, when they have arisen, or it's not about, do I continue in monastic life, but it's more to do with how do I continue in monastic life, or what do I cultivate? Because there's still lots of things that I'm called to, like as a composer, I still want to write music. I'm, as somebody interested in science, I want to cultivate that. I want to pursue kind of deep understanding of neuroscience. So I'm still kind of pulled in lots of different directions. And I think the commitment it's kind of a living thing, and it needs food, it needs cultivation, it needs support, it needs to be taken care of. Yeah, I feel very lucky that in our community we have so many ways of doing that. And primarily, I think what kind of keeps us going is this sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. There's a sense that we're not alone, and that there are lots of checks and balances. If somebody starts to veer off a little bit confused, go in some weird direction, we can check in on each other. We tease each other, make fun of each other. It's kind of, if somebody gets a little too proud, our brothers and sisters are there to kind of cut us back down to size, and because they know us, they live with us. And there are so many things in place in our monastic life to keep that strong determination alive. And so some element of that is, you could call it ritual, or you could call it schedule. There's a kind of rhythm, a regularity to our life. There's a lot of inspiration in just seeing that it works, seeing that it helps people. When I see somebody come to the monastery for a retreat, and they come with sorrow in their eyes, with stress, they're exhausted, they maybe don't trust, they're kind of like, what's going on here? Am I really in the right place?
Sounds like me at the beginning of this retreat.
Well, we maybe all a bit like that in unfamiliar circumstances. But yeah, there's this sense of the exhaustion of the world that they come with.
Yeah.
They're there, and after a few days, maybe 2 or 3 days, they touch their suffering, they touch their sorrow, they're able, to let that flow. Maybe they cry, something moves inside, and then they see others going through the same process. You start to see that, we're joined as well in that experience of suffering. We're connected. And then through that suffering, we start to touch more joy. The smiles start to bloom on people's faces. Their eyes start to glow, and to kind of open up, and we trust again in the human family. It just works. That process happens again and again, week after week. And when I see that transformation in people, I feel like that is my food. That is my spiritual nourishment. Their joy is my joy. Their transformation is my transformation. Their healing is my healing. Yeah, I just feel like this is worth doing. This is a good life to live. This is a good path to follow. And I just want to take another step. I don't know exactly where it goes, but I know the direction.
Hello, this is Amisha. We are just taking a little break from the conversation here. On behalf of myself and the team, I want to say thank you for being part of creating a beautiful future. We make this for you, so that we will all have the vision, wisdom, and activism we need at this time to weave a new narrative. Can you help us with this? You can do that by making a monthly donation to the podcast to cover our costs. Just the equivalent of a fair trade banana you might eat or a chai latte you might drink whilst you listen to this will make a huge difference to us. Head to www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community to become a monthly patron. And the other thing is to tell your friends about this podcast so they can tune in too. Send them a message or post on social media and let them know what you love about it. And whilst you're at it, leave us a review. And now, back to the conversation. Thank you for your loving beauty. Feeling into where we are as humanity at this moment in time, and climate breakdown is something that is very present on many of our friends listening's minds, and how to find one's place in the story and to find a place where one is contributing to the story that they want to be contributing to. I wondered what your personal take on it is right now, of like, what do we do? And also, I've read Love Letters from the Earth, written by Thich Nhat Hahn, and it's a beautiful offering. And I wondered if you could also share a little bit of that essence, and maybe they're the same, I don't know. But,
yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. I think it is. It's the question of our times, in a way. What to do? What is the appropriate?
The car horns are saying, yes, this is the question.
We confirm.
It's quite nice doing an interview outside. It feels like we're part of the ecosystem. I mean, we're always part of the ecosystem, but perhaps when we're in soundproof rooms, we don't realize quite how much our environment is with us.
Yeah, we're embedded in it, and I think we do have to listen to it. That's the first thing for me. In a way, the first spiritual practice for me is to listen, to really listen.
You're getting a yes to that as well.
Yeah, to listen to ourselves, to listen to our pain, not to ignore it. You know, that's what I had to do as a young man, and I didn't know how. I needed to learn how to do that. And then also, to listen to each other, to listen to each other's pain, each other's joy, hope, fear, and to listen to the earth. I think the moment that we open ourselves up to that, it's clear. The earth is in pain, and she's calling. She's calling for us to listen. The cries of agony are getting clearer, getting louder every day. The burning of the Amazon is happening now. The oceans filled with plastic, and the plastic is even raining into the ice caps and into the mountains, and it's everywhere. We've caused so much destruction, and I think partly what stops us from listening is the fear that we'll be overwhelmed, that it's going to be too much. How can we encompass that? The scale, the magnitude of this pain, not just of all the fabric of life in which we're embedded, of all the species of this rich tapestry of life, but the human suffering as well, the migrant populations, the climate stress that's causing political breakdown, and wars, probably proxy wars going on because of those reasons. And that's, if we look with clear eyes, we know that that's only going to get worse at the moment. And we think we have to be very honest that we're running into the wall, and it's not so far away. When we talk about climate crisis, climate breakdown, I think these are the appropriate terms. And it's important to really face that honestly. But there is a fear. There's a fear that it will be too much, it will be overwhelming. That there's a kind of, I feel it in my body. It's like a physical pain, like grief, and also maybe a sense that malaise, a kind of, or despair. How can we still be doing this, knowing what we know? How can we be continuing? And then the question is, if we do allow some of that pain in, how not to be drowned by it? Yeah, the first thing is to listen, and in order to do that, we need a certain amount of stability and strength, and we can't do that alone. I think we need each other. We need community. We need to be together in that process. We also need joy. We also need to stay in touch with that. To have enough joy, enough peace to be able to hold without drowning in it. We need to know how to cultivate that joy kind of in every moment, to see that despite the incredible pain and suffering that is there, there's also wonder. The wonder of the present moment is still available to us, that we are embedded in this crazy historical situation, where perhaps we're heading towards the end of our civilization. And yet at the same time, right now, I mean, if we look around, we're sitting under this beautiful willow tree. The sun is in the sky shining, the blue sky is there, the birds are singing. It's so beautiful. It's so incredible to be alive. Just to be alive, to feel that life in every cell of our bodies, to feel the wonder of taking a breath, to know that we are on this miraculous planet floating in space, surrounded by stars in every direction. It's incredible. We live in this vast, crazy, beautiful cosmos, and we need to be able to touch that regularly, to kind of go, wow, to be filled with that wonder and joy. With that, maybe we have a bit more stability to be with the pain. If we ask, what is the appropriate action to take? What do we do together, collectively, individually? Again, I feel immense gratitude to my teacher, because this is really, he taught us, he kind of showed us a way. And one thing that he said probably about 10 years ago now or more, so we need to fall back in love with Mother Earth. Because if we love the earth, then we cannot hurt her. It's kind of like what I was saying before. If we really, truly love, then we don't, it's like we can't continue to harm her in this way. And for that love to be true love, it has to have insight in it. It has to have wisdom. It's the wisdom of non-discrimination, the wisdom of being able to release the illusion of our separateness. So we may have the idea that we are human, we are conscious, and the earth is a planet, it's rock, it's not conscious, it's kind of inanimate matter. But our teacher has invited us to look in another way, to see that the earth is us. We are the earth. We're just the bit that talks, with words. Maybe the earth talks in other ways. There is no us without the earth. We arise from the fabric of the earth. We eat, we breathe, we drink. We're in this constant flow of exchange with life on this whole beautiful planet. And when we start to see in that way the boundaries, the separation, the separateness that we feel, this terrible isolation that we can feel starts to dissolve, in a way we're compelled to act, to do whatever we can to save the beauty that still remains.
And create more beauty.
Yes, absolutely. That creative life force then, I think, is part of the solution as well. We need that. And we need hope. We desperately need hope. But in order to touch the hope, I think we need to be honest about the fear and the despair. We need to accept that our civilization may end. This is a terrifying prospect, but civilizations are impermanent. We know that many great civilizations have come to an end, and ours is not different. It can end. It can collapse rather easily. Supermarkets only have probably 2 or 3 days of food. If they stop getting resupplied, it won't take long. We need to be honest about that. We need to look fearlessly at that, because it's not doom and gloom. It's just honesty. And it's also intelligence, because we know that if we continue to ignore that, then the fear and the panic may overwhelm us, and we may actually bring things to an end sooner just because we're panicking. Whereas if we can face the fear, accept it, and know that the earth will heal herself. Maybe humanity will be wiped out. Okay. But after a few million years, the earth will restore herself and life will continue in some form. Maybe some kind of conscious entities will raise their heads and look around and feel love and compassion and continue. So on a cosmic timescale, it's okay. And we need to touch into that as well, and to know that we're part of this bigger cosmic timescale as well, that this is also our body, not just the earth, but the whole cosmos. And so seeing that, we get the gift of non-fear. And it's with that we can act, with peace. Because if we just have fear and panic and desperation, then we may make more of a mess, even if we're trying to help. So the sense is, like, if we're going to do something, let's do it from a place of freedom, of real clarity, of peace. But then we really do something. We don't just kind of sit around on our meditation cushions and breathe in and out and smile, but we get involved. We really, we have to act.
What are some of the ways that Plum Village and everyone associated with it are being encouraged to act, or ways that you're excited to act?
So I think we have to act kind of on all levels. So there's the things that we can do as individuals, for example, eating less meat. So we're vegetarian or vegan as monastics, but we don't want to impose that on anyone or force anybody. But just by kind of becoming aware of the impact, the environmental impact of industrialized agriculture, and the suffering, just the scale of animal suffering. I mean, I think we're up to 50 billion animals killed for human consumption a year, every year. There's 7 billion of us, and we're slaughtering 50 billion animals. Sorry if the number is wrong, but it's in the tens of billions.
Yeah. And then many people are not part of eating meat. So
right.
How many animals per person?
Yeah. It's like a vision for me. I see these slaughterhouses and these rows of cattle just going by, these bolt guns just getting, they're like concentration camps.
Of course.
We've actually taken the technology of concentration camps and we've adapted it and we've made it as efficient as possible. It's as hands-off as possible. We don't have to see, we don't have to smell, we don't have to see the fear, the terror. So we can pretend that, that suffering is not happening. But when we get in touch with it, compassion has to arise. Compassion does arise, and then maybe we will have the strength to make a change, and that can be huge already. To make a change in our lifestyle, it would be wonderful. We're also stressed in the Western world. We tend to work too hard. We have long hours. We want to make more money. We want to have a bigger house. We want to have a good retirement plan. All these things, of course, it's normal. It makes sense. But what if we just reduced? Maybe we could reduce the amount that we work to 60% and take a pay cut, live with less, live in community, maybe share a washing machine, share a car. We don't need so much in terms of resources. And we try to model that in Plum Village. We try to show that it's possible to live as a community, to share these things and to have a smaller impact.
I guess with that also to think about how our work is propping up or feeding the system. I've been thinking about that a lot with like yoga retreats in the way that I've been doing them, just feeling like they have become places for people to come, get topped up and then go back in and get tired and stressed and busy again.
Yeah.
It just made me think, what do I want to do with these teachings? That inspired me to find a way to help bring practices, tools into daily life for those that are living non-monastic lives and need some extra guidance. And also because it helps me address that difficulty that I have of wanting to live a spiritual life and live a life that's contributing to a beautiful future in a broken system.
Right. I think that's a danger for us as well in the kind of, just the fact that we now talk about it as the mindfulness industry is kind of a hint. Something is up, we can get assimilated by the machine as well, and mindfulness can just become another Band-Aid that we put on our malaise, we work hard, we get stressed, we just manage to calm it down enough with a little bit of spiritual practice, whether it's yoga or mindfulness or something else, and then we go straight back in. So if it's only kind of enabling, just allowing us to continue in this crazy way, then something's up. It's not bringing about the kind of change that we want to see. So for us, when we teach mindfulness, we're very careful not to make it clear that mindfulness is not a tool. We don't want to instrumentalize it. We don't want to use mindfulness to get something, maybe even like more productivity out of our employees, or more creativity, or calm them down enough so that we can put even more pressure on them.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's part of a path. It's part of an ethical path. And we trust that when we teach mindfulness in that way, naturally we are kind of awakening an ethical sensibility, awareness in people, that then kind of we start paying attention more to the causes of the effects of our actions, to the impact that we have in the world, the way we live, what we're contributing to, and we want to change. So there's kind of like, in our community, there's an ongoing big discussion about that. How can we live in the world, but not be of the world? To be in this world to help and to make less of a mess. Yeah, I think there's so many things going on that there's so many ways that we can do that. Yeah, a lot of it is kind of in us already. That understanding is in us, and we just need to have a way to listen to it, to feel it, to know. Like, I remember becoming vegetarian. It was quite, like, nobody told me to do that. Nobody said I should be vegetarian. The brothers and sisters in Plum Village just helped me to be more sensitive, to be more aware of what I was doing. So the next time I put a piece of steak in my mouth and I tried to chew it, I couldn't help but feel the suffering of the animal, of the cow, and I couldn't swallow it. I just had to stop. I do believe that by cultivating this kind of sensitivity to our own suffering, the suffering around us, kind of an ethical way opens up. And we always discuss that in our retreats as well. So we're always encouraging people to look at their choices, to look at how they are part of the economic system, if they invest, where do they invest, if they consume, what do they consume, and how, including media. Media is also consumption. So we maybe need to go on a diet as well, to really be healthy. We need to know what we're taking in. I see a lot of hope in our community, a lot of creativity, a lot of wonderful projects arising. I have a friend who, thanks to this practice, he had a kind of brainwave, and he created a foundation, or a fund for artists, for musicians to write songs, and then the idea is one song, one tree. So somebody downloads the song, they pay, whatever it is that you pay these days, a euro or whatever. So the foundation then plants a tree.
Beautiful. What's the foundation called? I
think currently it's called the mangrove. So it's like mangrove, but mangrove.
Nice.
Mangrove fund. Yeah. So
smooth.
They're just getting started. But that kind of thing, I kind of feel like, okay, this is cool. This could work, because I just read this study that actually just planting trees is the cheapest way to absorb the excess carbon in the atmosphere. We maybe need to plant 1.2 trillion trees. It's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
But it's doable. And there's actually enough land that's not being used for farmland. The land is there, it's available. It's not very expensive to plant a tree. This is something that we can actually do.
We planted some trees this week.
Yeah.
And we'll share Mario's contact details, because a wonderful man that's here, he helps people to organise mass tree plantings in their local area, and gives instructions of how you do it, and makes it easy.
Right. Yeah. this is something that we can really do. And I think we also have to get involved to raise awareness in whatever way we can. So for us to support Extinction Rebellion is clear. You know, I think for me personally, I had the chance to go and visit one of the protest sites in May. I was in London for a retreat, and we went and did a walking meditation around one of the encampments. And I was so moved. I found myself moved to tears just suddenly, several times, just as we were walking in silence, just seeing the joy on people's faces, seeing the creativity in the way the space was arranged. I've been to many protests, anti-war protests, back in the early 2000s, but this was the first time I really felt completely aligned with what was going on. This commitment to tell the truth. This for me is very powerful. It's very profound. You know, that there's no alcohol and no drugs, that there are no masks. You know, that there's this sense that we want people to see our faces. You know, we want people to, and they had all these amazing things going on, that they had all these people who go up to the police officers and apologize and say, look, we're really sorry that you have to stand here all day. We know you've got other things to do. You don't want to be here. You don't want to have to do this. And we don't want to have to do this either, but we have no choice. And we're not doing it just for us, we're doing it for our children and for your children. And just by having that dialogue in this non-confrontational way, they got so much support. Like a lot of police officers were actually kind of like, hey, yeah, actually you're right. Like, yeah, I am concerned. I'm worried for my kids too. So that for me is something new in the world, which is touching a lot of people, which is kind of bringing a lot of energy. And so, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to see how I can contribute to that.
And would you be up for being arrested?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, my brothers and sisters practically had to hold me back in May. I was like, sign me up. What can I glue myself to? And they're like, you have to teach. We're doing a retreat tomorrow. It's not very practical. I was like, oh, come on. I'm ready.
What gives you that conviction?
I don't know. It's in my bones. I just feel like it's too late. We've tried everything else. We just have to put our bodies in the way. I really feel like we've tried so many ways: legal action, advocacy, and it's not that all of those things are good and should continue. We have to continue on all fronts, but to really get people's attention, I think, is essential, and to say, look, we're all in this together. We're not. It's not a political thing anymore. We're not against anybody else. There's no othering. There's no enemies here. So this is a question of our survival. My teacher, he coined the term engaged Buddhism back in the 60s during the war in Vietnam, and he said something that really is always with me. This sense that when you meditate in order to see the truth, to see clearly what is going on. And once you have seen, you have to act. Because if you don't act, then what was the point of seeing? And he told this story about being in the meditation hall and hearing the bombs falling all around. And he said, we were safe in the meditation hall. We were okay. The bombs were not falling on us. Because you're cultivating awareness, you're aware, the suffering is real. It's happening. So for him, it's like you can't stay on the meditation cushion. You have to get out there. You have to help. And in his case, that was creating a movement, a youth movement to rebuild the shattered villages, to rebuild schools, to build clinics, to bring healthcare, to try to put people's lives back together. And when those villages got bombed again, they rebuilt them again. And sometimes 5 times like that. And so there's this incredible kind of sense that hope is indestructible.
And that's why we need to cultivate this resilience in us so that we can just go back to the same place and do the same thing over again if we have to.
Yeah, exactly. Because we cannot give in to despair. Despair is our greatest foe. It's not human beings. Human beings are not the enemy. But despair, anger, violence, hatred, discrimination,
A lot of the things that are happening in our world are happening due to decisions made by other human beings. Why do you feel like so many decisions are being made that are not seeming to move us into greater harmony with each other and with the earth? It feels like there is a lot of separation between different humans and also the humans and earth that's being led quite purposefully at this time. And it's quite hard when we talk on this level. Suddenly that becomes a very strange concept that's happening.
Yeah.
When you're kind of just in the world, going about life, watching the news, it just seems very normal. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
But as we're sat here under a tree, talking about this innate connection, I wonder why does this happen? Does it need to happen? Does there always need to be some playing out of the darkness? It's a big question. I just
you're not sparing me here. Can you just solve like the biggest problem we have?
Of all.
Yeah, I mean, I can't claim any kind of solution, but I can share, my current kind of reflection on this, and for me, it's a reflection that's really central to my whole journey and my path as a monk, as a human being, and it goes right the way back to the struggle I had as a teenager and the death of my mother and trying to integrate that and understand it. And I think it is about worldview at some level. What is it that we believe? What do we think is really going on here? And what are we cultivating in our systems of education? I mean, what kind of worldview are we actually seeding in people and then promoting and growing, cultivating? My teacher gave me the name Brother Phap Linh, which means something like true dharmic spirituality. That's how he translated it into English. And when I got this name, I actually felt it like a balm, like something like a deep healing balm somehow in the core of my being. I really literally felt it like in my rib cage. There's something like a wound that had been there that I didn't even know was there. So that was amazing. But then I had to ask myself, okay, that's all very well, but what is it? What is this spirituality business? Because I'm not so sure, really. It comes back to this question of, the basic dualism of matter and spirit. Like, is there such a thing as spirit? What is happening here? Is there anything such as meaning? Is there something that can be called love, altruism, something real, not just the selfish gene, kind of fake altruism of our genes just trying to find ways to reproduce, to continue themselves, and so us kind of learning ways to convince each other that we're nice and to get what we want. Is there something more? Is there something? Does this whole thing make sense? And I know that what I grew up with, the story that was constantly reinforced was the story of separateness. Right? They gave me a name, a birth certificate, passport. They told me this is your birthday. You are you. You're not your brother, you're not your friends, you're you, and you have to take care of you. You take care of number one. You know, you have to perform, you have to be good, you have to be smart, you have to pass tests, you have to get a salary, a job. You know, it's like that's what we're told, that's what we grow up with, and that's actually what even language reinforces every time we open our mouths. You know, I say I. You know, I say I am. I use the verb to be. You know, so I invoke these notions of self, of existence, of separateness of subject and object, perceiver and perceived, and I do this every time I speak. And so, of course, I mean, it's kind of natural that that's what we then perceive, and that's what we believe. And if we do believe that, if we believe that we're separate, then well, it's kind of natural that we want to like shore up, you know, our little kind of enclave and gather whatever we can. You know, now you got literally billionaires buying chunks of land in New Zealand and building bunkers, as if that is the solution. You know, you've got other people talking about downloading their consciousness into artificial, you know, realities and simulations and living forever in those. You've got people talking about going to Mars, you know, and it's like, well, if you start from that place, you know, I am a separate being, and yeah, I seem to care a little bit for the people who are close to me, the people I love, my family, and I'm going to look after them. But what follows from that necessarily is a kind of tribalism, ultimately, and protectionism of that. However big your circle of compassion goes, you know, you're going to look after your tribe and try to take care of them. And that may be now that we're kind of looking at the wall, that may be at the expense of some other people or at the expense of the planet. And you may say to yourself, well, that's the way it's got to be, because there's not enough for all of us. You know, there's this kind of scarcity thinking. And so for me, what's powerful is the sense that, you know, coming back to this principle of tell the truth of Extinction Rebellion, it's not just tell the truth about climate breakdown, but it's tell the truth about our interconnection. Tell the truth about the reality of our interconnection with the world. It's coming back to the sense of falling in love with Mother Earth, seeing that when I look out and I see trees and I see what is around me, I have the tendency to think that I am here and I'm looking out and what I see is my environment. But as I train myself in meditation, I learn to look out and see myself. This is me. I'm not separate from any of this. I mean, it's demonstrable. You know, it's not that complicated. And I think many of us, especially in the environmental movement, you know, in the different spiritual practices, we kind of get this. We know this. We feel it already. We may even talk about it and say it, write great books about it. But for me, the more pressing question is, how do we bring this into our daily lives? How do we make this concrete? How do we live by this? How does this inform the way we brush our teeth? How does it change the way I open the tap and I see the water flowing out? You know, do I see that as my lifeblood? Do I want to preserve it and cherish it and not waste it? Does it change the way I take a step on the earth? And I see that I'm taking a step on my own body. This is me, and you know, I want to do that with awareness, with gentleness, with love. You know, I think in our society we've gone on this journey, and you know, maybe Nietzsche said, you know, God is dead. You know, he made this declaration. But I think we went further. We killed the cosmos. You know, we created this vision of a dead cosmos made up of inanimate matter, inert matter, particles meaninglessly bouncing off each other until the end of time. It's just like this giant game of billiards. It's kind of like really depressing, and maybe the last bastion of mystery is this sense that somewhere in this box of bone and meat, which we call our skulls, there's something happening that we don't really understand, which is consciousness. And even the neuroscientists mostly will acknowledge that we don't know what on earth that might be, but we've relegated it. It's like the last place where there's something mysterious happening. And there's even neuroscientists now going further and saying consciousness is an illusion. It's an epiphenomenon of brain activity. It's unimportant. We don't need to worry about it. It's like it's going further. We will try to kill even that.
I'm sure that we're not worrying about consciousness. We're worrying more about the climate.
Right. Yeah. But for me, it's really like the solution is also to understand that if we live by these understandings, if we live in this world, this dead world, then that will affect our behavior. And if our actions will not really come from love, compassion, understanding, if we live in this dead cosmos. And so the solution also has to be spiritual. It has to be to re-spiritualize everything, every area, every realm of discourse in our society. We should be able to bring back the sense of mystery, of interconnection, of life, of love, but we can't. Like right now, if I was to stand up in the UK and, talk about Brexit in spiritual terms, I'd kind of be laughed out of town.
Depends on the audience.
Maybe.
I could fill a room for you.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, but I really see, but that also gives me hope, because I see there's a rising wave. A little bit like what you're saying, there is an audience for that actually. Maybe they're currently like a little bit dispersed or scattered or here and there. We haven't all found each other yet, but it's happening. Mm-hmm. For me, it's at the level of collective awakening. It's real. This is on. It's like it's down. It's happening. We are waking up. We're waking up to the illusion of our separateness. We're waking up to the truth of our interconnection. That can give rise to a new spirituality, a spirituality that can go hand in hand with science. It doesn't have to depend on dogma, belief, but that can be, to some extent, tested, in our own experience, that we can see for ourselves. And I think we can bring this kind of understanding of interconnection into all realms. It can transform art, it can transform media, journalism, politics, architecture, music. I mean, how many novels are telling this story of our interconnection? How many films? The films that we go and see, they still somehow to stay in this myth of separateness. You've got separate people, often fighting. There's good guys and bad guys. We're not saying like the earth is your body. Even though like many of us get it, it's not in the public discourse yet, not in a powerful way. And I think it could be. And that, I feel excited about that. I feel hope for that.
Yeah, it is exciting for sure. How can we take that understanding of interconnectivity into a lived experience, an embodied experience?
So many ways. Maybe to give a very concrete example. The next time you eat, eating can be this very profound contemplation of interconnection. And it's like a training, maybe often we eat and we're distracted, or even looking at our phones or reading a book or thinking about something else. We may end up just eating our projects, not the food. We eat our worries, our anxieties, our regrets, thinking about what's going to come next. And often, even with the most amazing, organic, delicious food, it kind of goes by, and, at the end of it, I can't even remember what it tasted like. For us in our community, it's really we really train, we try to make it into a spiritual practice. So this is basically mindfulness, but mindfulness of eating. So, I take a piece of carrot and I maybe just take a moment to look at the piece of carrot before I put it in my mouth. And it doesn't take long, 1 or 2 seconds. I just look at it and I'm aware. I put a piece of carrot in my mouth. I know I'm putting a piece of carrot in my mouth. That's mindfulness, right? I'm doing something and I know that I'm doing it. Very simple. But it goes further, because when I look at that carrot, what do I see? Do I just see calories? Do I just see, sugars and starch and whatever else it's made of? Or do I see the sun? Do I see the rain? Do I see the farmers? Do I see the field, the earth? Do I see life itself, coming together in this amazing miracle of, like seeds growing roots and leaves unfurling and pushing up through the moist earth, and this sweet carrot in the darkness growing, like I can see that. It's not difficult. If you really look at a piece of carrot, the sun is blazing there. It's not just poetry, and it's not just imagination. It's visible. I can put that into my mouth, and I can know directly my connection with the earth. So it's very simple. It's very concrete. When I drink a cup of water, I can see that this water was cloud. And I can drink a cloud. It's very fun. It's actually really nice. Like, you should try. Drink a cloud. And it puts us more in touch, I think. And that's just, it's very, very, very practical.
I'm going to drink a cloud right now.
Actually, our teacher would share this with us. Being of a somewhat scientific bent, I asked myself, well, how much cloud am I drinking, in fact? With our, thanks to Google, it's not actually difficult to find out. So I Googled it, and I found that I think if I remember rightly, 1 milliliter of water is 2 cubic meters of cloud.
Wow.
It's kind of cool, huh? So
it's really cool. I mean, that was a beautiful sip of water I just had.
Right. So it's joy as well. It's nourishment. It's life. It's, so we can make our lives more beautiful. We can live a life of poetry, and that's not just kind of pie in the sky. It's not navel gazing. It's not narcissistic. It's actually real. It's the truth. You see what I mean? That this is tell the truth.
And then that beauty impacts whoever we're around, and we share that beauty.
Yeah. And it impacts our actions as well. I think the more that we live like that, the more we're aware of this interconnection, the less we can continue in our current way of life. And we don't change our way of acting out of a sense of guilt or duty or obligation, or we do it out of love.
And this is in part what Liam Kavanagh, who is here curating this week, is talking about, this idea of radical well-being, giving us kind of a guidance for the climate crisis that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. That well-being necessarily involves, as I was saying before, being with the pain as well, because you can't have well-being if you're covering up a whole layer of climate grief and climate panic and climate anxiety. If we're not looking at that, and if we're just turning on another episode of Netflix to forget, that's not well-being.
And it has to be as decapitalized version as possible of well-being, not just now consuming more almond milk, avocados, but actually looking at one's lifestyle choices, as you've talked a lot about choice, and creating a life that is a lower impact, but that well-being comes from that experience of it.
Yeah, also, exactly, like living in community, we can have less impact. We know that already. But that's not all. Like living in community, we can also have more joy, more well-being. That is the well-being. If I remember this scene. When I was still living in London, I had to go through Liverpool Street and I had to pick up something, can't even remember what it was, maybe some milk or something. And I never used to go shopping there. I'd usually go to the market, but on that day, okay, I had to go. So I went to Marks and Spencer's. It was the most alienating, weird experience of my life. I couldn't even find the milk to start off with because every fridge was full of ready meals. And orbiting around these ready meals were these very well-dressed, suited folk, men and women, mostly young, none of them looking at each other, all of them with these dead eyes, nobody smiling, people with headphones in, and kind of like avoiding each other. And then they were faced with these baffling choices, because what you have is choice, right? Wonderful choice. I can have Indian or Italian, and next to that is Spanish, and Mexican, and Thai, and Chinese, and you can have anything you want, but it's in a box, it's separate, and it's rootless. It's utterly rootless. It's disconnected from any culture. It's disconnected from any community.
You're probably going to go and eat it by yourself watching
TV. Exactly.
I did that for a lot of my 20s.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like that living alone and being really busy, like the idea of even thinking about what to cook is too much.
Yeah. But then let's talk about co-housing. This is something possible. Maybe many of us still have to live in cities. That's okay. But let's find a new way to do that. Let's talk about co-living in which maybe we share some meals. Maybe not every meal. We can be practical as well. But from time to time, we get together as a community and cook. And the great thing about being together as a community is then we don't have to cook every day. We could take turns, and it's much more joyful.
I get the impression, having not been to Plum Village, that it is a vibrant, dynamic place that maybe not what someone could imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, we have a lot of ideas about what monastery life is like, and maybe the first idea is kind of like some cold monastic cell.
I've been to one of
halfway
those.
up a mountain. Yeah, sure. And that, that can be too. But Plum Village is certainly not that. We live together. The monastics, we share rooms, maybe 3 or 4 brothers or sisters to a room. We live extremely simply, but very joyfully. There's a lot of joy, a lot of fun, a lot of creativity. In the retreats, there's music. There's just an outpouring of human simple joy. I think sometimes my teacher is a little misunderstood because people think, in the 60s he was engaged, he was, working with Martin Luther King, and he was, trying to get, stop the war in his country. And then people think, oh yeah, and then he, just made Plum Village, and then he just started doing retreats. And, what happened to engaged Buddhism? And we get people showing up and say, why aren't you engaged anymore? But I think for us, the insight is that this is the engagement, to actually receive, we in Plum Village, I think we have maybe 10,000 people a year or more coming on these retreats. And all of those people come to us exhausted, broken, tired, burned out, in despair. And we return them to society, refreshed, full of hope, with a greater ethical commitment and awareness, able to reconcile with their loved ones, able to knit together their communities, to even bring greater harmony in their workplace and openness and discussion of ethical values. And, it's like that effect ripples out. And so that is our engagement. we're very active in that. We work with these, people every week. Like, we really stay in touch with people, and we help to listen to them in a way that can help to relieve some of their suffering, anxiety, and restore their freshness and their strength. And that, to me, feels very engaged and very connected to everything. It's like the world comes to us, and we also go out and teach. And there's a lot of sense that we care for the carers, the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the aid workers as well, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, and people who themselves are kind of at the coalface sometimes of human suffering, and come to us often burned out, and I'm wondering if they can continue. That's kind of our role, in the body of society. We're like the liver or something. It's like playing this function of helping to restore, to drain away some of the toxins and give people back their strength and their vitality.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, for your sharing.
We can thank Brother Pham Hanh as well for his profound relaxation.
I was going to invite him to say a few words. Would you like to say a few words? So we've been joined for this conversation by Brother Pham Hanh, who's been holding space.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Actually, what comes to my mind is just in this week, it was so nice to experience how, like living in the monastery now for 7-8 years, that to find now a kind of inner freedom that is like not concerned with judging like how things should be. I was so surprised. I was like, wow. So that is actually the thing that surprised me most, and to discover an inner artist. Once there was this story about the Buddha who got invited to play the flute, and he hadn't done that for like many years. And then when he started playing, he played like the most beautiful as he has ever played. I'm just very happy to experience this in myself, to discover that the practice really worked. There's also a joy to be found in my monastic life, a deep kind of joy that is very simple. Yeah, I really resonate with when Phap Linh shared, like, it's very important that we don't act out of despair, that all of our actions that we do, they carry the signature of the emotions that we are dealing with. Yeah, and also to build on that it is so important that you have your foundation of joy and brotherhood and sisterhood and contentment in order to, from that, act.
Thank you. And so, thank you both for your time today, and we'll post link to Plum Village and to everything else that we've mentioned during this episode. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amisha. Beautiful.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The future is beautiful. is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question: how will you create beauty in the world?